Conservationist, environment journalist, and now an author, Bahar Dutt is with us, and today we are talking about her newly released book, Green Wars. Bahar, thanks for talking to Doordarshan. First of all, when did this idea trigger in your mind that you have to write the book? Because this book is a chronicle of, I think, all the major things that you did in journalism. So when did this idea come to you that you have to write a book?
Well, honestly, I hadn't thought I'm capable of writing a book. To be honest, HarperCollins, the publisher, the CEO of HarperCollins, Kartika, she came to me and she said, why don't you write about all the experiences you're going through and chronicle that in a book? But I'd like to say this is not just a collection of my writings or my reportage. It basically has a personal narrative. And the narrative is the tension between environment and development. Because I think that's the biggest problem facing all of us today. How do we resolve this tension between a modernizing economy and saving the planet? And that's what the book's about.
Yeah, this is one of the underlying themes of the book, the debate between environment and development. Now, as a journalist, and this book talks about your journey as a young lady who's trying to save snakes, to someone who's took on the powerful government in UP, and there's so many other incidents. And one thing which I really liked about this book is that it's like, although it's about very serious issue, but it's also a page turner. I read it as a adventure novel or something like that. Which of these incidents is most favorite to you?
I would say there are many. Each of them are have a personal story in themselves. Each of them describes a location I go to and what happens there. So we travel to Arunachal Pradesh, we travel to the Arctic, we travel to the rainforests of Indonesia, and each time we've tried to pick a species or a cause or an environmental issue but linked it to a story. The one which I consider the most, I would say, the dangerous was what happened to us in Goa, which was basically, as everyone knows, there was a mining ban in Goa at that time when we were reporting. This was in 2008, and we were reporting on this mine which was operating on forest land, and they were operating despite the fact that the Supreme Court has said no to mining. So we got the footage. And lo and behold, suddenly we find we're surrounded by goons. There's a truck which has come and blocked our way, and they suddenly lunge for our camera. And maybe you as a journalist have also, you think that as a journalist you're protected, no one's going to attack you. That's when I learned that sometimes the system can turn against you.
Are we, the common people, are we also getting a bit selfish in the sense that, okay, whatever little concern is there for environment, it's about the impact of environment on human beings. But then there are thousands and millions of species which are lost. There might be some species which are indigenous to that particular place. So are we getting a bit selfish in that sense? I'm talking about the common people.
Definitely. In conservation biology, we say we're just being anthropocentric. All we care about is what's happening to the humans. But I would say what happens out there in the animal world or in the ecosystem will come back to us. We're all living in an age where we look forward to green spaces, open, fresh air. We all need this. It's something which is inherent in all of us. So I think we're just being short-sighted. I think the problem is when we think of mining, we think, okay, we're going to get electricity. But we're not thinking how long can we be dependent on coal? Why are we not planning towards renewables? Why are we not planning to make renewables cheaper and more accessible? And the other thing which this book talks about is, why is renewables only for poor people? Why do us rich people living in the cities, why are we not thinking of converting to renewable energy? So, and as far as species are concerned, if you notice in this book, I've tried to talk about species like the Saras crane, the gharial, the hog deer. There's not one chapter on the tiger, for instance. It's almost, I didn't want to focus on charismatic megafauna. I wanted to look at the small species which we don't get to hear about, but which are very much part of India.
Okay, tell us something about your personal journey. You belong to a family which has eminent journalists. But you decided to study biology, conservation. But it was in destiny that you had to come to journalism again. And so about this journey, tell us something about that.
I think I reached journalism just by default. I still call myself a conservationist first, a journalist in denial. So I still believe that. For 8-9 years, I actually worked on a rural project which was with snake charmers. And I wanted to look at how do we, we go on saying let's save the animals of the world. But how do we do that when people are dependent on those snakes, for instance, for their livelihood? So can we come up with livelihood options? So I spent 8-9 years of my life traveling to villages in Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Haryana. I went and lived with those people. And what we found was that they have an inherent knowledge of snakes, of their music, their culture was still very alive. So we tried to look at alternate livelihoods for them.
So there are a number of interesting stories in this book, and I really like the fact that it's like, although it's a very serious theme, but it's also a very interesting read, and you can read it as a novel as well. I mean, interesting adventure novel. Is there any incident which is not in the book, but for our viewers would like to tell? I mean, which is interesting?
Well, it's not in the book, but I think one story which I would have liked to do was on frogs. They're this tiny. They're literally the size of my thumbnail. I would have loved to include a story on frogs, because I went and did this lovely show where we went into the forest. We went deep down into rainforest, and we took out these little tiny species. So I would have loved if ever maybe there's another addition to the book, this would have been an interesting story. But I'd like to tell one funny anecdote which is in the book, which is the story on monkeys. And there was I was, before, as I said, I did other things before I came to journalism. And we were running a rescue center for monkeys. And we had the famous Dr. Jane Goodall, who's a world-renowned monkey chimpanzee expert. She came to our shelter. So we had around these 30 animals, and there was press people all over the place, and the animals were very jittery. So this monkey came forward and yanked her hair out. She was feeding them and she was talking to the press, and he just came, and she had silver white hair. But she was so sporting about it. She just gave us the sample of her hair, said frame it and you keep it with you. And this is a lesson for people that they should never mess with animals.
So here we are talking about freedom of expression, but many times, I mean, as a journalist, how difficult it becomes to cover the issues of mining and issues where the corporates are involved, where the government is involved, and even, I mean, when every television channel or newspaper is affiliated to some kind of corporate house. So is it become difficult to cover issues like that?
Of course it's difficult, and of course we live in a time where corporates own everything. And yes, it is very difficult. I've had pressures in my time. The only way to deal with it, and that's what I tell young journalists, is make sure you get the corporate side of the story as well in your story. So if you're reporting on, say, a mining incident which is happening on forest land, make sure you get the corporates, that they get to say their side of the story. That legally protects you, and that also makes sure your story is balanced.
So this book, Green Wars, it has a number of stories where, I mean, there's stories of struggle, the wars between industry and environment. Over the years, when you have covered the environmental issues, do you see these green wars, the incidents of these green wars increasing today?
Yes. I think the incidents are going to increase, only because people on the ground who are living next to those resources that are being exploited, they are going to become more and more aware. We just assume that we can grab whatever we want because we live in cities, and we can just, use it for ourselves. But on the ground, if you look where the mining is going on, people are protesting.
Obviously industries, and they have their impact on the local populations and all, but the impact they have on some of the rare species, and it takes millions of years for a species to evolve.
Exactly.
So does it scare you or worry you sometimes when you see, I mean, in some projects happening in some forests where
that is the case, where that problem of awareness you mentioned. We just assume species are like sacks of potatoes. We pick them up, we put them there, and they'll just flourish. A tree doesn't just happen overnight. It's not a eucalyptus tree. A forest is not just trees. It's, a series of complex, biodynamic processes which have taken place over centuries. So I'm going to give you the example of the Narcondam hornbill, which is in this small island in the Andamans. Now, everyone, when I spoke about it, said you're being anti-national, because there's a defense project which needs to be set up on that island. And I had, on Twitter and social media, everyone attacked me saying you're being anti-national. My point is that that bird doesn't know how to live in any other habitat except for that. And I'm saying this because that bird has evolved over centuries and centuries, probably long before any of us existed.
Thank you so much for talking
Thank
to
you.
Doorshan.
Thank you.
So that's all in this episode of Ecosphere. Next week we'll bring you more stories from the world of the environment. Keep watching DD News.